Good evening and welcome to 1010 News, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. Hope you all had a great Christmas. Now let's get right into the news. A 25-year-old Afghan hostage has been released by the Taliban and also rescued by the Taliban. Nabi, a construction worker looking for work, was captured by a group of armed men from the Islamic State during his trip to the capital, Kabul. The armed men told the passengers that they were keeping them hostage for their wives and children held by the Afghan government. The kidnappers were from the neighboring country Uzbekistan and came to Afghanistan to take part in the jihad with their families. During the time of captivity, Nabi went through several methods of torture but could not see exactly what was happening as all the hostages were kept blindfolded. There was a rescue attempt by the Afghan government, but it had failed as the Islamic State had engaged in gunfire. The government later announced that it lost track of the location of the hostages as they moved around several times. However, Nabi told press that they were relocated only 4 times. The kidnappers had also taken videos of the hostages and once even beheaded one of the hostages in the video. These hardships led many of the hostages to feel that death was a better option than living. However, they gained freedom and hope as the local Taliban attacked the IS-controlled area and took the hostages to a Taliban community. Several hundreds of Taliban congratulated the hostages and released the hostages back to where they belonged. Nabi is now in Kabul receiving treatment for kidney damage and trauma from the tortures during his captivity with ISIS. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has asked his former enemy, the Taliban, for intelligence on the Islamic State. A Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman has announced that the contact between Moscow and the Afghan Taliban involves only sharing intelligence about the number of Islamic State fighters in the Afghanistan region. A U.S. commander has told Congress that Islamic State gained strength in Afghanistan in recent months with as many as 3,000 fighters. Putin worries that the Russian jihadists in the Caucasus region and the former Soviet republics would join ISIS in Syria. Analysts say that Putin is trying to project strength and relevance onto the Islamic State. Former CIA counterterrorism official Philip Mudd says that Putin is telling those states that he will work with the Taliban to ensure that he will gain intelligence about them before they attack Russia. Russian media reports have addressed concern that Russia is supplying weapons to Afghanistan, but the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman said that the only weapons transferred by a commercial basis would go directly to the Afghan government and not the Taliban, as Russia strictly follows the sanctions regime against the Taliban. Evacuations of the rebels in the Yarmouk camp has been put on halt as the area was deemed unsafe for civilians. 18 buses were scheduled to leave the camp on Friday. However, the arrival of the buses were delayed due to safety reasons. The buses were due to pass through territory held by a rebel group whose leader had been killed early that day by an airstrike. About 18,000 civilians have been trapped in Yarmouk since 2012, and ISIS militants have taken over parts of the camp earlier this year. Since then, Yarmouk has been divided into areas controlled by 4 different groups: IS, Al-Nusra Front, pro-government Palestinian militants, and anti-government ones. Once Yarmouk is declared safe, United Nations proclaims to send aid to the civilians. China has expelled a French journalist and claims that the article she wrote was critical of the policy towards the Muslim population of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Beijing has confirmed that it will not renew press confidentials of Ursula Gautier, the journalist for a French magazine. Beijing released that Gautier's article about the unrest in Xinjiang supported terrorism and cruel acts that killed many people. Gautier expressed disbelief of Beijing's claims and believes that Beijing is trying to deter foreign reporters. Quick facts about the Uyghurs and Xinjiang are that the Uyghurs are the ethnically defined as Turkic Muslims that make up 45% of Xinjiang's population. Meanwhile, the Han Chinese make up around 40%. China regained control in 1949 after destroying the state of East Turkestan, and since then a massive flow of Chinese immigrants has implicated a fear of an erosion of traditions to the Uyghurs. Meanwhile, in Beijing's capital international airport, over 220 flights were canceled on Friday as pollution caused poor visibility. Beijing has suffered great pollution levels the past months, has issued many severe pollution alerts. The air quality index readings touched 500 airborne particles, which are called dangerous as it can enter the bloodstream through the lungs. Research show that anything above 100 particles is unsafe, 150 unhealthy, above 200 very unhealthy, 300 hazardous, so 500 you can basically say it's downright toxic. Civilians have expressed great concern with the environment as some are trying to find methods of obtaining fresh air and prevent elders and children from becoming ill. Coal is known as the highest carbon emitter, and it is suggested that China, the world's largest coal user, has been burning more coal than ever before. There's devastation in Australia on Christmas Day as bushfire destroyed over 100 homes in Australia's Victoria state. Although no injuries have been reported, hundreds of firefighters, 60 tankers, and 18 aircraft have been battling the enormous bushfire. It has been announced that the fire has the potential to burn for weeks, even though the initial threat has been eased. Those who lost their homes had to sleep outside or in hastily built shelters on Christmas Day. The fire began on December 19th when a lightning strike hit the trees and strong wind developed the fire into a great bushfire. Victoria is known as one of the world's most fire-prone regions. There has been enormous flooding in South American countries of Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil as more than 150,000 civilians have been displaced. Heavy rain began to fall on December 18th, swelling up the both Uruguay and Quauray rivers. The most affected country, Paraguay, has declared a state of emergency, causing the president to free up $3.5 million in relief funds. The Paraguay River in the capital, Asuncion, is just 12 inches away from flooding and could cause a major widespread flood against the Asuncion area, which could affect thousands of more people. By the river, it has been reported that 90,000 people have been evacuated. 4 people had been killed in the country by fallen trees. And about 200 electricity pylons have been damaged or destroyed by the strong winds. In Argentina, 20,000 people have been evacuated, and at least 2 have died due to the floods. The floods have mostly affected 3 provinces within the country. In Brazil, nearly 1,800 families in dozens of cities have been forced to leave their homes. Thousands of people in Uruguay were rendered homeless in the past few days. Although most of them returned home, some have suffered great losses from the rain and flooding. Dry weather is expected to come for Uruguay and Brazil, fortunately. However, water levels are expected to continue rising in Paraguay and Argentina. Back in the United States, Alabama too has suffered great losses from heavy weather as heavy rains and floods have hammered the state since Wednesday. The severe weather has killed at least 18 people, destroyed hundreds of homes, and broken great records of rainfall. The governor has declared a state of emergency and advised all civilians to stay inside and not drive through the waters. Now, the state has declared a severe warning for tornadoes as well, and even more rainfall. Now, for some lighter news, on Sunday, the 2015 Miss Universe was announced. Well, 2 of them. Steve Harvey first crowned the Miss Universe title, to Miss Columbia. However, after an exchange of glares between the judges and the hosts, Steve Harvey finally realized his mistake as Miss Columbia was soaking in the glory of the title, waving and receiving bouquets of flowers. The whole deal. Harvey told the crowd that he had made a mistake and that Miss Columbia was the first runner-up, crowning Miss Philippines as the rightful Miss Universe. He profusely apologized to Miss Columbia, Miss Philippines, and the audience for his gaffe. The president of Colombia told the press that he was elated that Colombia won the Miss Universe title twice consecutively, until, that is, he saw that Harvey messed up. However, he still showed great pride as he said to the Colombians she would always be Miss Universe as there are photos to prove it. Meanwhile, Harvey coolly accepted his mistake as he posted a post on Christmas saying Merry Easter. Oh, Harvey. Now, let's go to Brian Kim for our latest news and science. Brian?
Thanks, Andy. For the first time in space travel history, SpaceX has successfully landed and launched their Falcon 9 rocket booster on Monday. The company has expressed that this landing is a first of many more rocket-controlled flights up and down. There has been great praise as each recovered booster can be relaunched and reused. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla Motors, has expressed that an enormous fleet of rocket boosters will accumulate rapidly. This launch and landing is significant to the space industry as it shows more hope for unmanned and remote-controlled missions and cheaper alternatives for the current spacecrafts. However, some scientists have expressed great doubt about the cheaper costs and say that we will only know until we explore deeper with the technology. Back to you, Andy.
Thanks, Brian. And this was the 1010 News of the Week. I'm Andy Hong. Hope that everybody has a great new year. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next year with your top 10 news in 10 minutes. Stay educated.